The Holy Scriptures foretold the signs of the last days prophecies, and now they're happening like the Bible said. There's more prophecy updates around the signs of the last days prophecies. The country of Turkey is continuing to hold an American Christian pastor by the name of Andrew Brunson in a Turkish prison, where he has been locked up under this Turkish persecution now for over 500 days. He's being held on false charges made against him by the Turkish government of Turkish President Erdogan, with him saying he is a spy and terrorist, and Brunson, falsely accused, could spend the rest of his life there in prison. Here is a media video that gives some background on this situation, and then afterwards we'll come back and look at the latest details on this and how this is becoming a big issue between the U.S. and Turkey, and how this is connected to the last days prophecies. Let's look at the video clip.
An American pastor reportedly faces up to 35 years in a Turkish prison. That could amount to a life sentence for 50-year-old Andrew Brunson. He's a Christian pastor from rural North Carolina who spent the past 2 decades in Turkey. But Brunson's been detained since Turkey's failed coup attempt in 2016, and on March 20th, state-run Anadolu news agency said he's been indicted on terrorism-related charges. Brunson denies any involvement, and his daughter Jacqueline Fernari recently asked the UN Human Rights Council to help secure his release.
He is not an armed terrorist trying to overthrow any government. My father is a peaceful pastor.
Former U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson also called for Brunson's release during a recent trip to Ankara. But Turkey is reportedly demanding extradition of U.S.-based Muslim cleric Fethullah Gulen in exchange for Brunson's release. Gulen also denies involvement in the failed coup attempt.
So the update on this situation is now showing how this American Christian pastor is being falsely accused and persecuted by Turkish President Erdogan for Erdogan's own diabolical purposes. After the attempted coup by the military in Turkey in the summer of 2016 against Erdogan, of which he survived, he has since turned the country hard into a more authoritarian Islamic state like Iran, and he blamed the coup squarely on a Muslim cleric named Gulen, who supports a tolerant Islam and who lives in the state of Pennsylvania in the United States. But ever since the coup, Erdogan has demanded that the U.S. extradite Gulen to Turkey for trial, which the U.S. has not done. Then Erdogan's government arrested American Christian pastor Brunson, who speaks Turkish fluently after having ministered peacefully for over 2 decades with his wife in Izmir, Turkey. They falsely accused Brunson of helping to orchestrate the coup against Erdogan, with the Turkish courts accepting an indictment which demanded prison for crimes he had done in the name of the Gulen movement and also the Kurdistan Workers' Party, and for obtaining state secrets for political or military espionage. Well, why don't you just go ahead and make up some more stuff and throw it in there? That was already a pretty long list. But with no credible evidence, and with Turkey resorting to just an awful tactic of actually using secret witnesses that provide false testimony. And then they also charged Brunson with committing an act of terrorism by spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ in the majority Muslim country. After his arrest, Christian pastor Brunson was thrown into a nightmarish Turkish prison, and he's been held there for 1.5 years. For 1.5 years, with Turkey not presenting any evidence of its accusations against him, which amounted to literal persecution upon this poor man. And now the case of Brunson is becoming a big issue between the U.S. and Turkey, with the United States telling Turkey that Erdogan, the Turkish president, is using Brunson simply as a pawn in Erdogan's diabolical efforts to practice hostage diplomacy with the United States. And Erdogan himself has even come out and said that Brunson's fate is directly tied with the extradition of Gulen, the Muslim cleric in Pennsylvania. Erdogan said that if the U.S. wants Brunson, then deport Gulen to Turkey. But now, 66 U.S. senators sent a letter to Erdogan, U.S. senators, demanding the immediate release of Brunson, accusing the Turkish president of holding him in prison without presenting any evidence of its accusations. And senators in a joint Republican and Democrat statement said the following, that Turkish President Erdogan has continued to violate the trust between our two nations by holding Pastor Brunson and other innocent Americans behind bars on fabricated charges. And he goes on to say that Turkish officials who participate in the detainment of any innocent American citizen should face international consequences, and the actions against Pastor Brunson in particular qualify as hostage-taking, end quote. Also, the U.S. State Department has said it is convinced that the Turkish government does not have any credible evidence to convict Brunson of terrorism charges. Also, now U.S. President Donald Trump is speaking out for captive Brunson, where the U.S. President said in a tweet, Pastor Andrew Brunson, a fine gentleman and Christian leader in the United States, is on trial and being persecuted in Turkey for no reason. They call him a spy, but I am more a spy than he is. Hopefully, he will be allowed to come home to his beautiful family where he belongs. End quote. Brunson's daughter, who has been speaking out for her father, is afraid to travel back to Turkey, saying that the Turkey she grew up in with her parents as they pastored a church in Izmir is no longer the Turkey her dad is now in, calling it a changed country and dangerous place for foreigners. And she's right. Brunson has been caught up in the middle of the last days prophecies, which foretold that Turkey would change. And now Turkey's attitude and behaviors are coming into alignment with its last days prophetic role in the last days prophecies. For the Revelation 9 prophecy foretells that evil fallen angels will drive turmoil and conflict that's prophesied to start a biblical world war at the Euphrates River, which that same river itself starts in the country of Turkey. And this turmoil and conflict that Turkish President Erdogan is fomenting there are signs of this last days prophecy, where Turkey is central in the prophecies and is increasingly fulfilling its role. The family of Brunson is asking for everyone to pray for him, since the situation may be coming to a crossroads with his trial happening now in Turkey and the U.S. increasing pressure, and also Turkey putting Brunson under crushing circumstances where he is in what they call a nightmarish prison and also in solitary confinement. Please pray for an American. Please pray for an American Christian. Please pray for an American Christian pastor falsely accused, Andrew Brunson, to where the Lord God himself could receive glory for delivering this man from prison in a last days miracle.